Takes a second, and we are live. And hello and good afternoon once again, and welcome to How to Stay Sane. I'm just going to waffle here for a few minutes as I watch you landing in and joining us. You're all very welcome. As I say, pull up a pew, make yourself comfortable for the next 30 minutes so we have a bit of crack and a bit of distraction from all that's going on all around us. We are currently live on Twitter, we are live on YouTube, and we are live on Facebook. So you're all very, very welcome. And it's glad to have you joining us. And those of you who probably will watch this back at a later stage, as I know a lot of people do, you are also very welcome along. And I know you're going to enjoy the next half an hour. And if you do, and I think you will, as I say every week, if you could do me the favor of sharing the links, that would be great. And spreading the word for me, that would be terrific. If you want to look back on any of the previous episodes of this webcast, they are all available now on my website, which is barbarascully.com. And again, feel free to share it around and spread the word, and that would be doing me a great big favor. So, January, with all its 573 days, is finally finished. We're done. We're through it. We're in February, which, as far as I'm concerned, is springtime. On Monday, we celebrated the feast of the great goddess, the Celtic goddess Bridget. And so it is very appropriate. I've just put something on my screen there. It is highly appropriate that I have a mighty woman and an archetypal wise woman to talk to us today and to inject some of her great wisdom into the conversation. I have been a fan of this woman's music probably forever. But she was interviewed on the Tommy Tiernan show about 2 weeks ago, and I was really struck by a couple of things that she said. And I thought, you know what, we need to have a chat. And I'm very grateful to her that she has given up her time to talk to me today and to talk to all of us today. Mary Coughlan, you are very welcome. It's great to see you, and thanks so much.
Nice
it's great to have you. Great to have you. First of all, how are you? Briefly, are you coping all right?
I'm okay. I'm okay this week. I had a really bad week last week, and I find it. I kind of just have to sit with it until it passes, you know. But I think last Sunday, was probably the worst day I've had in the entire 9 or 10 months or whatever we've had of lockdown. I just could not motivate myself to get even off a chair. So there, you know. But I eventually went off down for a walk, and it was lashing rain, and I got soaked. But I had a big owl coat on me, and I felt the better of going out, you know. So
it's funny, isn't it? And it's that kind of getting yourself out is the hard bit. I find that too. But once you get out, you normally do feel the better for it.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, it's so easy because there is so much going on, and we're kind of encouraged to stay at home. It's easy to make an excuse and not go out, but I always feel better. I always feel better from going out and walking around, you know.
It's tough for anybody involved in live entertainment, this whole thing. I think it's far tougher for anybody involved in live events than it has been practically for anybody else, because of the fact that that section has been shut down since the very beginning. It has never reopened.
Never.
There must be musicians and singers and performers who are in serious trouble now at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, my last gig was the 7th of March, and the one before that was the 29th of February. And I released an album. It was supposed to have been released in May when I was 64. And I had 35 really, really great festivals booked for myself all over Europe, Scandinavia, and Glastonbury, and the Galway Arts Festival. Anyways, that's gone. So when I came to terms with that, I really thought it would be for a few months. I think a lot of people thought this would be over in a few months. We have been really badly, we're not the only ones who've been badly hit, but yeah, it's been very, very difficult. When June came, we were allowed to do some gigs in my garden. I did 3 in the garden. I had my band out. Everybody is suffering, you know, from all across the music and arts industry. Everybody had a little go there when things were open, you know, restaurants and stuff, but we didn't. And then along came a very nice incentive, which was the small venues, live music. Some small venues got some money from Department of Arts and Culture and the Gaeltachts and Enterprise, and we put on gigs, but to nobody, you know. So I did the Roisin Dove in Galway, which was really nice, just before Christmas, and it's just myself and the band, a lighting guy, a sound engineer, and a cameraman, and another camera that goes up and down all over the place, a little robot. And it's just the weirdest feeling to go into that place that would have 300 or 400 people in it, you know, and just to be there in an empty room. And we have a certain time to get in. So if you have to be there at 1:30 in the afternoon, you can't go in until 1:30. And then you leave the minute the gig is over. Just pack up the gear and go. So the highlight of our day was the Galway Plaza, a cup of coffee on the way home. You know, it's lovely to meet the musicians, and it was great to do it. But there were only a few of them, and not everybody got to do one. I was lucky enough to be able to do one. I did 5, I think. And then I've been busy with the group called MIA, which is Music and Entertainment Association of Ireland. They're trying to get some measures in place because we are actually the only industry that has not had like a support system put in place. You know, we're on the 350, and a lot of us had to fight very hard for that because I wouldn't earn, you know, some years I wouldn't earn that much money to qualify for the 350 because I did gigs in other countries as well, and so those gigs were not counted, you know, because they were not, you know. But you know, so hopefully between the live gigs incentive and whatever Mia will come up with the minister, the various ministers, we have to live on whatever we're allowed to do for, I'd say, for the next year. The only gig that I have in my calendar is May 2022 in Vicar Street. So that's from October 2020. The only gig that's been put back in is Vicar Street in May 2022.
God.
So it's not.
That's hard. That's very hard. Tell me, talking to gigs, one of the things that I love that you do, and you do them on Facebook Live, I think, is your singing walks. And I love those. I mean, they're lovely, and they're also kind of slightly poignant because we don't see you, but we hear you, and your accompaniment is very often just the birds. You can hear the birds, and you know, in the landscape. And I know you live in North Wicklow, Dan. You mentioned the Little Sugarloaf. So I always get the sense from those that you're very connected to that place, that you're very, you know, that it's somewhere that you actually said, I think, on the Tommy Tiernan show, that when you moved there, you felt like you'd come home.
I know.
Talk to me a little bit about that connection with place, because you're from Galway and you feel this rooted.
You know, I love Galway, and I left Galway though when my father's from Donegal, so I also spent a lot of time up there. Every year we'd go and stay with my granny, you know. But this here on the Little Sugarloaf, the side of the Little Sugarloaf, looking over at the Big Sugarloaf in Kilmacanog, there was a small house for sale here, and I came to see it, and then I was outbid by a guy who eventually bought it. And from the day that I never knew this place existed, and a lot of people who come up here say we never knew this little. It's a dirt road on the side of the Sugarloaf that runs across the whole face of the mountain. You can't see the road from anywhere else, and it's just, you know, grass basically. And I used to come up here then with my partner John. We used to walk up here. We used to have picnics, and we used to just sit and imagine that someday we would somehow finally live here, you know, because you can't build up here, and you have to like buy something that's already in existence, you know. So one day we were on our walk, and a woman opened a window and she shouted out at us, and she said, "Hello, Mary Coughlan," and she said, "Do you want to buy my house?" And I struck up a great friendship with her. Her name she was a great woman. She was the first woman that ever rode in dressage competitively for Ireland way, way, way back. I think she was in her early 80s when I met her, and she wanted to move off the mountain into someplace more communal, you know.
Yeah,
And so I bought the little house from her, and I mean that was after I chased down every avenue that I could, from looking at deserted houses, from walking around and asking people, and people would even stop me in the street and say,
yeah.
"I think there's a house for sale," you know, coming up. And eventually, I hung tight. I was 3 years renting in Bray before I came up here, you know. So
So
uh,
you're home now,
I'm home now. Yeah, I think I often
settled.
wish that I'd be carried out in a box, you know, but yeah.
That's brilliant. The other thing which really struck me from your chat with Tommy Tiernan, and I really want to hear more about it, was you mentioned that you were a medicine woman,
Yeah.
and you mentioned doing shamanism. And I want you to talk to me a little bit about that because that fascinated me. You also talked about, you also self-described yourself as a crone, which is something that I would identify with as well, and a wise woman. So tell me about all of that and about your work with shamanism.
Okay. Well, some people think, I suppose, I'm daft, but I came to it. It's 27 years ago since I was in the Rutland Centre. I got sober there 27 years ago, and I had a wonderful therapist. Her name, I've often spoken about her, Maura Russell. And Maura set me on a path of healing, really, myself and my family, you know. And I kind of became open to just I never knew about that kind of stuff, you know. So I started to do meditation. I started yoga. I mean, I used to do yoga back in the day, you know, when I was growing up. It was very fashionable. Richard Hittelman's
Yeah.
yoga book, I remember. I met a guy in Galway called Anthony Gorman, and he lives in Kinvara. I don't think he used to live there at that time, and he was doing this thing called vortex healing, and it was just a meditative type of healing, not unlike Reiki, and
Yeah.
you heal with your hands. I then went away, very well publicized. I went away to do fuck it therapy in Italy. My
To
kids
do
bought me
what?
fuck it, fuck it therapy. There's a guy called John Parkin wrote a book called Fuck It, and my kids bought it to me
That
for
sounds like something every woman should do. Fuck it therapy.
fuck it. Everybody should do it. He has
Yeah.
a wonderful website, and they bought me the book, and I went down to. I was fascinated by the whole thing, and it's just it's called "Fuck It and Let It Go." You know, basically that you have to let go. I mean, people talk about that in various ways. So I'm just explaining how I came to it. So I went down there. I went down there for a retreat for 2 weeks. I think it was actually 8 days. We stayed on for a few extra days, and it was just more of the same about learning how to let go, you know. And then I was back. I went down there 3 or 4 times. I mean, it's a really nice holiday, so I'm live down in Umbria, and
Excuse.
I mean, it's just to be with other like-minded people who are exploring the whole whatever was going on, you know. And then I came back, and I don't know how I heard about them, but like a lot of people talk about shamanism, and there's a lot of stuff associated with like taking ayahuasca and magic mushrooms and all that stuff. But Karen and John, who run Shlian Cree, it's an old Irish traditional ways that they explore, and I did 2 years of training. Just really nice stuff. Just breathing, no drugs involved, obviously.
No magic mushrooms.
No magic mushrooms, no ayahuasca. A lot of breathing, a lot of moving, a lot of lying down, a lot of drumming, a lot of chanting, and just getting in touch with. It's my ancestors. I suppose really when I stopped drinking, I had awful chips on my shoulders, you know. And one of the first really, really important exercises that I did was with John. And he it was a whole day of a whole afternoon anyway, certainly, of walking in your grandmother's shoes, you know. And it involved starting in the room and taking 7 breaths, long and slow and fast ones, then, and walking back 7 steps, and doing that repeatedly until something, I felt a deep connection with my grandmother, for instance, walking in her footsteps. Um, and I was able to lay down on the floor after that and spend hours literally doing nothing, but in a deep state of meditation, I suppose, really. And they call it journeying, you know. Um, and it enabled me to see it from, you know, I figured I had a pretty rough upbringing, you know, but when you talk about forgiveness of self and forgiveness of others and letting go, I suppose you have to see it from others' point of view. So that was one of the most that really shifted my whole perspective on blame and forgiveness and all of that stuff, to just step into somebody else's shoes, literally. And it was, I mean, I really, really felt it, and I kept going the whole day long, breathing 7 breaths in fast and then 7 slow, and walking 7 steps backwards. And it's a guided meditation that you do with somebody else, you know. And then we went up to Dundee House for weekend retreats, and they were wonderful experiences. That, like, I mean, I just, you know, I'll go again as soon as I can. But it's just about connecting with the earth, connecting with yourself, connecting with ancestors on some sort of spiritual level. And I suppose one of the exercises that I had to do, and I really didn't want to do it. I drove home from there one weekend. It was a wet day, and John had said, "I want you tonight to light a fire." And I put it into a brazier because I couldn't light a fire on the Sugarloaf. I'd be arrested.
No.
And I had stones, and it was a transformational thing that we were working on, a technique, how fire transforms things. And to illustrate it, you put things into the fire, and then you sat there all night long, and you took them out of the ashes in the morning and see what happened, you know. And it was just a really practical way of how things change, you know.
Yeah.
How things can change. I didn't want to. I came up with every excuse under the sun that I could on the drive back. And I said, "Have you ever heard of fucking sitting outside all night, protecting your boundary and, you know, whatever." And I really, really didn't want to do it. So I lit a fire in the house, and I took some of the fire out and I put it in. And I had to put my back to my house and to look out over as much as I could see, you know, and own it and bless it and ask for protection. And I think I probably used to feel scared up here on my own sometimes before that, but never since.
That's
And
really interesting.
and we did have a rather bad break-in just a while ago. And my immediate reaction was to cleanse the house afterwards, you know, after the guards had left. And we physically cleaned the house because it was during, you know, it was during January. To clean the house on a practical level, and to put back or throw out what we didn't want that had been touched by the intruders. I had to just bless the house and do ceremony with sage and stuff, and water and fire. And you know, that allowed me to to very quickly claim my space again, you know, and make it safe. I've only had one bad nightmare after that. And you know, and a lot of people I know have said that after something like that happens, they have very long periods of being unsafe and anxiety. But just doing the act of, you know, burning the sage and using water and fire to reclaim it. So that's all I do with shamanism. I pour I pour honey into the ground sometimes if I see on television a lot of grief. I nurture the earth, I don't do as much as some people do. Some people, I do very small, spontaneous acts of stuff, and I'm very closely connected to the earth, but not as
Well,
I don't
I
garden,
did.
I
Yeah.
don't garden, I don't plant things. I plant random things, and I am in I am in my surroundings a lot, and the singing came out of that during lockdown. Just, I have never been in Ireland since 1984 for more than 3 months at a time, which is
That's
extraordinary, and it's
incredible.
been wonderful. And I've been able to take my kids with me to various places all over the world. But I suppose just being here and accepting it, it's one thing I learned from being an alcoholic and an addict, is the first step is to accept, So once
Yeah,
I
yeah.
accepted that I was locked in, it was hard. And there are days, I tell you, like last Sunday, I just said, oh, I know I just have to sit through it, and it'll pass, But
Yeah.
that 8 or 12 hours waiting for it to pass was, pretty bad.
Tough,
I've
tough.
done other stuff then. I did some regression therapy. I'm a seeker, I suppose, really.
And
Uh,
Mary, do you think that's something that you became naturally more aware? I know when you talk about your past and you talk about, your addictions, but do you think naturally that as you got older and as a woman, that it was almost that there was a separate thing driving you to find that kind of meaning and connection and ritual, which I think, a lot of us who grew up in the Catholic Church and were brought up, with all those rituals and then have walked away from the church, I think are finding our lives like devoid of any kind of ritual, which I think helps. Like when you described the break-in and the fact that you knew there was something you could do which kind of gave you back control and gave you back your home after you felt it was violated,
yeah.
that most of us are missing those things that we could do in order to help us on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I really, I mean, I loved mass. I must say, when it was in, I'm
Math.
old enough. Mass. I loved Latin mass. I loved singing. We had a choir when I was in school. We had a choir in the Pres College. Good Fridays were my favorite days. We got to sing the Stabat Mater, and it was like the whole thing, the ritual of it. I mean,
Yeah,
I was 14 or 15. I was unaware of a lot of stuff that happened in the Catholic Church, as were most people.
yeah,
And yeah, I was probably 13, 14. I loved the singing. I loved the incense. I loved that whole mystery about it, Um, and millions of people's understanding of the church has been shattered. But for me, still, you know I think there probably was somebody called Jesus, and the same as the Dalai Lama, and
yeah,
lots and lots of other wonderful healers. Some just locally in your community, or some people who work in this area. And he did, and I learned that through I think Mara Russell, that he probably opened the thinking or the talk of compassion and love and forgiveness. And that got skewed in many different ways into the Catholic Church, and it became what most organized religions become. But
yeah,
I have a wee altar here, in the house, and if anyone is in trouble or anything, they ask me, and they know to ask me to do a candle and a ceremony, and I do, and I send them often pictures of it, and and it might be only for 3 or 4 minutes. I'm not talking about
yeah,
day-long ceremonies or hours. To spend 3 or 4 minutes a day doing the action of lighting a candle, or burning sage, or I have a wee rattle, and people have given me stuff, and I have collected stuff on my travels over the world. The wee altar, as I call it, started off as a very small thing. It's now an entire shelf.
yeah.
And
It's grown.
there's bits of stuff there from from Uluru in the middle of Australia. The stuff there,
Australia.
from stuff there from Africa. I've been lucky enough to travel in Africa, India. There's stuff that I've collected that is from like the earth, or I probably shouldn't have taken them in my bag and stuff, but you know, they all. I just believe, you know, if any of my children want something, you know, that may or may not be, I said, if it's to be, you know, and I will do
Yeah.
it anyway. And I have
Yeah.
a mala nefa, which is a little bag that we make up and we put our stuff into it. And on the full moon, we take the wrappings off and we open it into the moon. And
Charges it.
like, you know, if there's somebody pregnant or something, I take a picture of them, I print it out, and I put them into my mala with a family member, or if there's anyone in, you know, love troubles or whatever, or anything, or a person who's passing over or passed on. I put all that stuff into my mala, and sure, it keeps me happy. And
Brilliant.
sometimes,
I think that's I did Reiki a number of years ago.
oh yeah,
And I would have huge time. And although I don't, I mean, and I kind of don't have an altar anymore, but I used to have an altar, and I should probably, it just slowly kind of got morphed into something else, but I really need to reinstate it, because I think all those things are just hugely important. And that feeling of being grounded, especially when all around us everything is a bit mental, is really, really important. Come here, time is running down, and I need to ask you, do
oh
you read?
no,
Are
what?
you a reader? Are you a reader?
I read, yes, I read. What am I reading
Have you
now?
any?
What am I reading now? Elena Ferrante's new book. I can't even remember the name of it. It's on the table somewhere. Do you know she did My Brilliant Friend?
Yes,
Um,
yes. And
so
you,
I got her new book, and my daughter also bought me a book for Christmas. I never remember the names. My head is gone in that regard, but I enjoy reading. And
no worries.
I also got Audible the other day, so that I could maybe listen
Listen
to
to
some
books.
stuff while I'm walking, not walking here, but like walking for exercise,
Yeah,
not contemplative walking. And yeah, I read a lot. I find it hard to read these days.
do you?
Yeah, just you know, there's such an awful lot of stuff going on all the time.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I put up a post on Facebook. We lost the power up here for about 4 hours one night in January. All the electricity just, I think all of
Gone.
Bray and down into Greystones, all of the power went out. And luckily the candles were there. And it was just the loveliest thing to sit, and the fire was on, and just like sit there with the candles. It was unbelievable. And there was
And you know, when power goes like that, I'm always struck. I mean, we haven't had a power cut for a while, but I'm always struck by the silence as well. You don't realize how much humming
humming. I
all
know.
your stuff does.
Stuff. But like that instant silence
Yeah,
and the fire and the candles, and it was really, really nice. So then I started to do it every night, just to turn. I couldn't have a power cut every night, but I turned off everything for an hour. You
yeah,
know, lit candles and stared at them, and sure, I forgot to do it then, you know, and then it slowly creeps back in, you know, life
yeah.
creeps back in. So you have to make an effort to do a little something every day just to keep you connected. I do something, and for me, the walking and the singing on the mountain is part of that, you know.
And if people aren't following your page on Facebook, they should do that so they can join in those lovely meditative kind of otherworldly almost singing walks that you do. When you're listening to music, other than singing music, what music do you listen to yourself? What music do you like listening to yourself? Do you listen to classical or folk or rock or everything?
I listen to everything. I'm working on a project at the minute, so I listen to a lot of I'm listening to a lot of Peggy Lee stuff. Um, John bought me a beautiful uh, Bob Dylan box set for Christmas, and I think I have every single recording that Frank Sinatra ever did, either in a studio or live. I throw
Wow.
one of them on. Mary Stokes sent me her album. It's here on the kitchen table. It's up for a turn. My kids listen to Paolo Nutini. My son Ian listens to a lot of rap and stuff. Really like Jay-Z, and I can't remember the other fellow. We went to see him at the Point. Jesus, it seems like years ago. So I was at a gig.
It was.
It was years ago.
Yeah.
I listen to. I'm very, very open, and no, I wouldn't ever put on something and say. I listen to some chanting stuff. I really like to listen to that, especially at night if I'm in the bed, or
Yeah.
sometimes in the afternoon when the fire's going. Put on. There's a couple of nice things. I went to a couple of Mother Amma. You know Mother Amma.
Yes, the hugging woman, is it?
She's a hugging saint, yeah. She I
Yeah.
always buy lovely chanting CDs when I'm there, and actually it was I they were selling herbs there once, and I asked one of the monks from India. I says, "Can you give me something to get rid of my big fat stomach?" And he said, "No, no, you must embrace your stomach." He said, "You are a wise woman now. All your wisdom is in your belly." He said, "You must use it." And I said,
I love
"Okay."
that man. I'm going to take that to heart as
And
well.
in the meantime, he gave me some holy basil to sprinkle on my food. And I bought a beautiful tape of Mother Amma singing, So it's nice. So,
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah,
it's the calm as well. It's the whole thing of calming the world.
it can,
With all of the
can.
things you've described, I think are great. The little bit of ritual, the little bit of knowing what's going on with the moon, and the whole kind of being tuned into energy. I think is hugely important. Finally, do you watch TV, or are you a Netflix person, or
I kind of lost the will to do that as well.
did you? Yeah, no,
I
that's
just
fine.
finished.
You're well off.
I finished. It took me about 2 weeks. Lupin. Everyone's talking about Lupin.
Oh, I've
Lupin.
just started that.
I just finished. I couldn't believe it was over last night. There's only 5 or 6 episodes. I didn't watch Breckerton or Brickerton or whatever they're talking about. Bridgerton. I didn't watch
Bridgerton, the
that.
most divine man I've ever seen in my life is in Bridgerton.
No,
He's
no. The most
gorgeous.
divine man I've ever seen in my life is I have started watching Paul Dark. Uh,
Poldark.
yeah, the new one that was out a few years ago. So I'm a
Yeah.
bit, and I told my sister to watch. She said, "Many used to watch that years ago. It's awful." And I said, "No, no, there's a new one." So I was only up to episode 6, and she's already on series 5. So,
Jeez, that's a good one right there. Poldark.
oh,
That's a
poor,
good one.
it's really nice. It's all shot down in Cornwall, and it's just so beautiful. Down Penzance, down around there, beautiful.
Bit of swashbuckling. Bit of
Bit of
swashbuckling.
swashbuckling, yeah.
Yeah,
Can't beat
nothing
it.
like it. Listen, Mary, our time is up, and I'm just so grateful. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. It really was.
Okay, thank you.
And I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so
No, it was
much.
lovely. Thank
And
you.
look, stay
Okay.
well and stay safe. To everybody who joined us, thank you very much for tuning in. As I say, this will go up on my website tomorrow, so you'll be able to pass it on and watch it back or whatever way you want. But for the moment, stay safe, mind yourselves, and I'll be here again next Wednesday. Thanks a million. Thank
Thanks,
you,
Barbara.
Mary.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a million. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.